Welcome back to another interview. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming back Cameron Chell, who's the executive chairman of Draganfly. Hey Cam, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back, Justin.
Thanks for being here. And you have some pretty exciting news today. I'm reading this here saying Draganfly establishes advanced trading partnership with Del Maro Aero. What exactly does this mean, Cameron?
So we were awarded a contract with the U.S. Air Force Special Operations Group to supply them with FPV drones and training. So it's a very significant contract for us because obviously U.S. Air Force Special Operations is a tier one customer and operator. Very rigid and strict, protocol in order to buy a combat tested and ready drone system, and to contract with the company to do the training of that system for U.S. Air Force Special Operations. So we're thrilled and excited, and it's another, I think, indication that Draganfly's been doing the right things and made the right moves to win this type of business.
So in the past, what we've talked about in previous interviews, and I'll leave a link to those in the description if people want to go watch, we've talked about people, process, product, which means that a successful company generally has all three. Most companies have two. So if we go through those, the people, the process, and the product. From what I understand from the news release, like this is the government, right? Like this is a tier one customer. Is that fair?
Correct. That's
Okay.
absolutely correct. Yeah.
And this is you expanding on an existing partnership, right? Like you've already sold into this agency or to the U.S. government, and this is kind of like an upsale where now they have the hardware, and now they're looking for some training on that hardware. Is that a fair way to think about it?
Yeah, it is. So we've sold into a number of different areas of the Department of War now. So whether that's airborne or Army or now Air Force, and Air Force Special Ops is the first time we've sold to them specifically. But these things come from a referral from other areas, and
Mm.
so we're thrilled. And now to be actually not just selling the product in there, but providing training, for the next couple of years of cohorts of special Air Force special operations coming through there, and having chosen the Draganfly FPV drone for these operations, and then having us train them on those drones, not just how to fly a drone or use an FPV, but actually be thinking through the concepts of operations and the use cases and such. I think speaks loudly to the experience and the boots on the ground that we've had in the Ukraine, the work that we've done in parts of Africa, the things that we do in Asia. I think that's a big differentiator, is that we're very operationally focused with our integrated tactical solutions group, who are all, kind of former tier one operators who actually go out and help us design that or understand the concepts of operations so that we design drones that are very, very effective for the missions at hand.
So people often say that success takes years to build, and it become like it's an overnight success, right? Overnight success usually takes a very long time to build. So
Yeah.
Dragonfly's been around for, I believe, 25 years. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
27 years this year. Yeah.
Okay, 27 years. And sometimes it's easier than others. Sometimes the market fully appreciates what's happening, and sometimes there is a disconnect. So from where you started versus where you are now, you've probably seen a few different administrations. So this comes down to the process and the product you're actually selling. So my question is, as you're working in different geographies and with different governments, like the US government is the gold standard, how have those conversations progressed? Like, have they gone from we're curious but not really urgent to now it's like, oh my God, we have to really make this thing happen. And we want to work with existing suppliers. And like, are you talking to them? Are they talking to you more? Just curious, like what that's looked like over years in different administrations.
Yeah, when we first started, the first application that we sold into was public safety. So it was actually traffic accident reconstruction, and it was an experiment by a federal police agency,
Mm.
and somebody who was a remote control, airplane pilot who had heard about these quadcopters. They weren't even called drones or tricopters that we were making, and they said, hey, maybe we could use that for, and it was just an experiment. But when you're that close to it, you see all the massive, vast applications that a flying camera, which was the other name before they were called drones, would or could have. And so that was kind of like the first kind of real commercial application that we started to develop, and then there was volumetrics and pipeline inspection and road inspection and things like that. But it wasn't until and so we had talked to lots of different militaries, and of course they're all, big Air Force and big Army and big, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna play with this. These are toys. Like, what are they gonna be used for? Like, and so there was really almost no traction. In 2008, we had a mail order, believe it or not, come in from the U.S. Navy, and so.
Mm,
As the best I understand it, and this is what I've been told by the operators there, that the first, Category 1, so small drone, that the U.S. Navy ever bought was from Draganfly, and that was in
mm.
2008. And that was after they saw us on the cover of Popular Science magazine as the innovation of the year, back when they had magazines and Popular Science was a really important publication. And so the operator who was working out of the Philippines at that time on a Navy ship, they were tracking terrorists coming down a particular river, and really expensive, and helicopters and planes, and they're like, why don't we try one of these? Flying camera things. And so it was a mail order that came in. Now, interestingly enough, that that person from 2008 who was a Navy aviator at the time and responsible for that pilot program actually works at Draganfly now.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and that was the first, real kind of like military, kind of order that we ever got. And that was it was a grand experiment at that time. Up until, kind of around 2015, 16, we started doing a lot of NRE, so non-recurring engineering work for like Aero Environment was our biggest client in that regard for years. So we were building tethered drones. We were actually building FPVs back then for the
Mm.
for the Marines. A lot of people don't realize they're that old. A lot of people don't realize that it was the U.S. Marines that introduced FPVs, one-way suicide drones, to Ukraine. Now the Ukrainians took it to a whole new level, but that was, and in fact, the two gentlemen that were responsible for that program in the Marines over 15 years ago are Dragonflyers. So
Mm.
they worked with us, so that's the depth of experience. And then Ukraine happened in 2010. And so we still didn't get any traction. It was all like it was, and that Marine program, even 15 years ago, it was an experiment. It was like, yeah, it's interesting, kind of thing. But after what people saw happen in Ukraine, and then the advent of really autonomy, which is
Mm.
really the kind of the bigger category of where drones fits in, it's grown now to uh, nobody questions the use cases anymore. I don't spend any time talking people into why drones are important. I now spend time, talking through actual concepts of operations and very intricate details of like, when this comes in, when that happens, when this happens, okay, how's the adversary going to respond to that? What are the countermeasures? Okay, what do we need to design around, the countermeasure to the countermeasure? It's,
Mhm.
that's where it's at today.
Mhm.
And to where the number one question is, how much volume can you provide? What is the capacity that you have? And, so other than meeting NDAA compliance and having a great product, which is table stakes, the only other thing they care about is how fast can you deliver and how reliable are you to deliver on quantity? That's the big question today.
So people process products. So we talked about the product a bit, and like I was really refreshing when we talked in our, I think it was our first interview where you mentioned that this was actually the first drone that helped save a human life too.
Yeah.
So at the time, pretty novel, right? You think it's going to be used in rural areas. It's going to be helped to save lives. Every company, not every company, but most companies make pivots. And like you said, we're experimenting, and now you see that there's a much bigger market here. The total addressable market for the government, guaranteed buyer, is significantly bigger. And I like, at least for someone like me, like a civilian who's watching all these conflicts around the world, I think people get really distraught when they see human lives taken. So if they're seeing drone on drone, right, it doesn't get as much attention, and that's exactly what people want. They want it to be unmanned. They don't want people boots on the ground. So what I'm hearing is that a lot of the military stuff now, like in Ukraine or over in the ocean, it's drone on drone, which means that you need to really have the ability to ramp because, like in Ukraine, especially, like they're going through drones pretty quickly. They're doing a lot of the attacks and they're finding pretty intuitive ways to use them too,
Yeah.
like going after power stations and stuff. So, that going back to the news release from today is probably particularly important. And when I think of any good hardware software company, they control the whole stack because if you control like a Windows machine, so if you control the hardware but not the software, they might not speak perfectly together. But if you have the hardware and the software and the training, they're creating that vertical stack where I'm guessing that's the reason why you've been selected by the government more than once. So would that be a fair assessment?
I think it's a fair assessment on lots of different levels. We do pursue an open architecture for the simple reason that we want as many payload options, like like the camera that's hanging underneath
Okay.
this that's above me, or logistics boxes, or weaponization, or MC catchers, which are part of a surveillance network, or communications devices. And so we want as many options that can go onto our drones as possible.
Mm.
So one of the great advantages that Draganfly has, simply because it's been around so long, is, at least to my knowledge, there's only two companies in the world that have full product lines. One of them is DJI. That's a
Mm.
company that's got 10,000 engineers, right? It owns 90%, 80% of the market, whatever it is. The other company is Draganfly. So we have everything from the small FPV drone all the way up to our Outrider drone, which can, stay up in the air for 7 hours, carry up to 100 pounds, two
Mm.
diesel engines, like and everything in between. And they've all got a common operating picture, flight characteristics, operating system, universal mounts. Uh, all the different payloads can fit on all the different drones as long as they're not too heavy. But it all the training is all similar. And that's what people want. So we don't try to lock people out of the payload that they want. We don't
Okay.
even lock people out of the AI that they may want, because they may have a particular AI system for a particular reason that they want run on. All of our systems
Mm.
have, NVIDIA chip integrations and some Qualcomm chip integrations, like even down to our FPVs have Jetsons in them, meaning that they're AI enabled. And so that just takes years to do. It, you know,
Yes.
it just take, so
Yeah.
a lot of the newer drone companies have some fantastic drones and capabilities, but they don't necessarily have a whole product line across it that does that whole thing. And so we're finding that to be a very big advantage for us right now.
I'm going to repeat back what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong. So, what I'm hearing you say is that there might be a misconception that fully vertically integrated our system is closed might not be the best solution because, like you said, they might be used in different applications, might be used in different geographies, or potentially they say now we want to attach this 100-pound payload, and you have
Yeah.
to know how to actually use it. So, you're creating kind of a platform. As we look
Very
towards the future for drones and stuff. Is what you're kind of saying, like there's going to be like a marketplace where you can plug and play different things into there, like you said, like with the NVIDIA stack or with a Qualcomm stack, where
Yeah,
you
well,
don't.
what the Ukraine military did, which was very clever, is they actually have a marketplace where their commanders can go in and, hey, these are all the different drones and the different things I can attach and move over and all
Mm,
that type of stuff. And that and some of that really, lent to our design and our form factors and stuff over the last number of years. And so you see other militaries now doing the same thing, where even in the US, they've selected who those players are that are going to be on the US marketplace, that's going to be out
mm,
there. And so that was a very important factor, that you have a common operating system, but you've got an architecture that's open enough where you can integrate all these different special payloads that are being innovated. Because like you said, in Ukraine, a particular brigade in action could go through 180,000 drones per month, and they have to iterate those drones every 10 days for tactics,
mm,
because the other side is countering what they're doing, and then switching it up, and then you're switching things up. So you've got 180,000 drones in a month that change technology, or some form of the technology, three times in that month.
mm,
So and so somebody might come up with a new IR camera that can, that's, $40 cheaper, and can, stay lit for 20 minutes longer. That changes the entire mission profile of what you can do
mm,
with 15 more drones. So you can change your tactics. Well, you don't have time to change a whole new a drone platform. You got to be able to plug and play and get that thing in there. And so that's really the fundamental basis that we built upon. And I think why we're getting, a
mm,
lot of traction. And none of that would come from, we have brilliant engineers, but it's our field operators
mm,
that are boots on the ground that understand that. Like a big advantage that we find with our FPVs is that they come apart, and so you can put them together in a way with different sizes of arms and blades. So in
mm.
one mission, you have now multiple opportunities to carry out different types of tactics. But the biggest thing that we found is that when you take them apart, instead of getting three FPVs in a backpack, you can get nine.
Okay.
Okay, now a squad has completely different capabilities. with nine, if you know, like, and so it's though, or you're driving out your trucks early in the morning and your 3/4 ton truck can take, 600 drones instead
Mhm.
of 150.
Okay.
Okay. And your concept of operations can change. So it's all those types of things that we've learned on the fly that learned in the real world that actually inform our design and manufacturing.
So the arms race is really getting you to innovate much more quickly because when you're getting real test data and real battlefield experience, you have to innovate. When you're working in the lab, sometimes you're working on theories. It's not necessarily what's going to happen in the real world.
Yeah,
Um,
you're innovating every 10 days at volume. It's
okay.
it's insane. It's absolutely turning the logistics wins wars, and it's turning the logistics notions and everything that people were trained on completely on its head.
So I do want to come back to the interview, sorry, the news release from today and talk about the specific training because what I noticed is you were doing like some outdoor training sessions with different departments where they can come, they can test, they can see what it's doing. So it kind of seemed like there was a lot of education that had to happen. And then when they're looking for that natural provider, they come to you. But in terms of actually ramping to production, like you mentioned before, I'm guessing that when they go through procurement, they're looking to choose the company that can have, again, the best people, process, product. I'm guessing that the list is pretty short. I'm guessing that there's prerequisites you have to have. And what my question was is if you're working like, I know you guys have been working on the last year and a half to increase your capacity. But what I'm wondering is, like you mentioned, that more than one drone can use the same base. So would it be fair to think of it like a car where you have a chassis and then you can print the shell on top so that you have the production line which is producing the chassis, and then you just choose whether this is going to become a light truck, it could become an SUV. Is that the kind of the way you guys are
Yeah,
producing these?
yeah, it kind of, so if you look at even the form factors, the connectors, how things, where our chips sit within them, yeah, they're all like, if you really get jammed and you got to pull a chip from one and go somewhere else, or like, all, blades from, like, yes, all
Hmm.
those things are factors that are driven by that, of what happens out in the field.
Hmm.
So and again, that just comes absolutely from that experience of just, 27 years of making a lot of mistakes.
How many could you produce if they said, "Hey, Mr. Chell, we want to have a lot of drones and we want them as soon as possible"? How many could you produce today?
Well, it depends on the actual drone, and of course, we've got five on in the lineup, and we've got three that are really hardcore on production lines. So organically, we can do about $100 million worth of product right now, and then inorganically, meaning through our contract manufacturers, who are particularly in the United States, who have our tools and trained by our people and all the rest of it, we could by the end of this year, we could ramp up to another $300 million of capacity. So we're not going to
Mm.
hit those numbers. I don't want to mislead anybody because even when you get the orders, it takes time to get it going and all the rest of it.
Hmm.
But if you don't have that type of capacity, you will not even get the orders.
Well, that's what I was going to say is that I don't think the government would invest into, again, sourcing from a company unless they know that they're able to actually ramp to where they want to go. So again, the future is always unknown. But if you don't have the capacity, and like you said, how many drones were being used in Ukraine? Sorry, like how many were
Well,
they
so
going through
an active brigade will use up to 180,000 drones per month.
per month? Okay, so what does that translate to into dollars?
Well, so their drones, they're probably averaging a cost, even though that's going up because they're getting more sophisticated. They're probably averaging around, $800 per drone, maybe as low as 500 in
Okay.
some cases. But they'll use any type of part. They'll use, that type of thing.
Hmm.
That same type of very low end drone in US standards would be about $2,000. So, you no,
So that's half a
and
million drones, like roughly,
that's
like at 100
well,
million run rate. Is that 50 million or 5 million? My math isn't working right now.
yes, sorry, somebody's trying to call me all of a sudden here. Uh, um, there we go. Hopefully that stopped. Um, yeah, so no, so 100, yeah, so that's 180,000 drones at 2,000 a piece is gonna it's gonna put you up around shit, now my math's not working. Sorry, we have to re-record this.
Let me see. Because what I'm trying to get to is that 100 million, and if you were to potentially ramp, like what does it actually look like? Because I think the numbers are pretty big.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
wouldn't. That would the 100 million organic would get used up very quickly. That's why we had to put the contract manufacturing
5
in.
million.
Yeah.
So again, hoping my math is right here. My brain was sweating a little bit there. So that seems like a really big number, and I'm guessing that you guys didn't really have this capacity need to expand until quite recently, which is when the war started really to take full effect. So if we shift this back to the news release from today, so this is the U.S. government. It's a tier one manufacturer. Why do they select Draganfly? So like, is there like a short list? Is it because you're already in the doors where people are referring you? Have you earned the business, or is it every time they want to source something or sign a contract that you have to win that business on your own merit?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of once you're in the tent and you've demonstrated your ability, and ability isn't just capacity. It's supply chain management, NDAA, which is National Defense Authorization Act compliance,
Hmm.
clearances for all your people, and then of course quality control. And once you're in that, then there's an audit process that your cybersecurity, all the rest of it, and you're spot audited on those things, and so you've got to be ready all the time to be able to do that. But once you've demonstrated that, you're kind of in the tent, and then you still have to compete. So the whole procurement process, in particular in the United States, has really got turned on its head for the better, as it relates to the warfighter, because they are talking about being able to iterate product quickly, right?
Hmm.
And having industry ramp quickly, but industry compete to always come out with the best product, that's being specified. So where development times before were talked about in years, now they're actually, talking about them in less than a year. And
Hmm.
so it's a very different dynamic environment, one that, quite frankly, I think will transform the entire US industrial base.
I got two more quick questions for you, Cam, if you don't mind. So the first one is like, if we go back to the news release, like, what does the training actually involve? So like, I read it, but like, I'm wondering, like, as an actual use case, like, what does it actually look like? Is it that you're training them on a marketplace or like a wide range of different drones? Is it specific to Dragonfly? Are they doing simulations for war, like war games? Like, what does it actually involve?
Yeah, so this particular one is specific to the Dragonfly first person viewer drones, and some of the capabilities that it has. And then the training we're doing is obviously the basic training around the actual flight characteristics and protocols, etc. But then it's also in advanced operations, like thinking through exactly how do you design a concept of operations, how do you include other people in the unit, and then what are your training techniques? So it's much more than a technical training course. It's really about, okay, how do you apply drones into the situations that these particular units are looking to fulfill. And again, I think that's why we're just so thrilled and honored to be a part of what they're building out here.
Mhm. So my last question, this is one that I was thinking of as the interview went through. So I'm thinking if they have the ability to do $100 million a year, again, if and when they get the contracts for that, and they can ramp further, which means they have extra capacity, what happens if the war stops? So like my question was, this is what I'm thinking. You can correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of technology we actually use today was developed in the military. So the internet, a lot of things like the innovations really happen because they need things to be small, compact, cheap, but also the best. So when we think about drones used residentially, drones used for delivery, again, nice ideas, but they're not quite there yet. So what I guess I'm wondering is, do you think that'll take it full circle where you guys started kind of doing more like more domestic stuff, like for residents, like for health and safety to help people save people's lives, then shifting over back to the government? And then what I'm thinking is that you could repurpose this production line to maybe produce those drones people like to use to, like you said, use the camera, right? Go shoot some shots over in your backyard or you're going somewhere. Is that like the benefit the company would get? Because we don't want war to last forever. But I guess I'm wondering is like, how could you
Well,
pivot again one more time?
there's at least a 7 year plus cycle here,
Okay.
because it's every country is rearming, and I say every country, but and every country is upgrading their tactics and such. And
Hmm.
so we're likely probably in a pretty conflict rich environment for the next number of years. But even if it did end today, all the cat's out of the bag, and everybody has to kind of retool. So
Okay.
there's years of work of that in front of us. However, drones are very much like the internet. when the internet first came out, I liken it to like, I remember people saying like, "Oh, why do I need the internet? Like, or a web page." Like, and they because they thought that's all the internet was is email
Hmm.
and a web page, and they didn't need a web page because they were in the yellow book, in the yellow pages. So, what's the point of this whole thing? And today, there isn't anything that doesn't happen, anything without the use of the internet. I
Hmm.
mean, we're doing our medicine on it. It tells us where to go, how to get there. AI developed because of it. So the notion that, hey, just because this particular market and FPVs are, there's not a lot of conflict, there's not going to be drones. We're building drones that sit on top of wind turbine blades and re-edge wind turbine blades.
Oh,
We're
okay.
building drones that do pieces of construction. We're like it is like and the
Mm.
more applications there are, the more applications that there will be. So I believe that things like internet, AI, autonomy, all right? And now you think about all autonomy that has to do with air, which is so drones and where the space we're in, those are fundamental building blocks of every piece of technology going forward.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like saying, well, what happens once everybody's got a web page and an email? Is that the end of the internet? Same notion. Like this thing ha has no end to
Okay.
it. It just will keep iterating on top of itself.
And like when I was a kid, I was always shown these things like with the Jetsons where we're going to be flying around, we're going to be in flying cars. I'm guessing that creating a vehicle that humans can like again domestically get in is a little bit more difficult than what we thought it was back then. So I'm guessing that an unmanned vehicle might be a good starting block, and the future versions of your product or of other unmanned devices might look different than what they do today. And like right now, a lot of sourcing happened through just in time, right? We don't need these drones. We don't need fighter jets. We don't need submarines. We'll get them just in time. But now it's just in case. They want to have these things just in case something goes wrong. So they want to have supply chains they trust. They want to
Yeah.
have producers they trust. And if they need to ramp, they want to have that. And oftentimes the government is less price sensitive. So if you're going to go through a growth phase to try to find out where you're going to go over the next 7 years, like you mentioned, this is probably a pretty good opportunity.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think what you think. You absolutely just nailed it on the head. It is all about just in case right now because we've all been caught with our pants down. Like we're all just like going, oh my, like if this happened today, we're screwed.
Hmm.
And so now, and that switch didn't really go on until post, kind of 2 years into Ukraine, and then of course a lot of the geopolitical tensions around the world. So I think it's gonna be a long time before any nation really wants to kind of get caught in that, especially when we're looking at, alliances changing and rules of engagement and rules of law changing. Uncertainty is going to breed a whole bunch of people making sure that they don't have reliabilities or dependencies on everybody else. So, what we're seeing is if we've got customers, I mean, I'm abroad traveling right now, and the number one thing is, okay, how do we ensure that we're manufacturing here?
Mm.
We have to protect our supply chain. And these are in countries that are, traditionally very, very close allies with each other but they just cannot take those risks right now. So it's a very interesting environment.
Mm. I got one more quick thought, if you don't mind. So, as I'm thinking about the next generation, I forget where this was. I think it was somewhere in Europe where they were surveying and seeing whether or not people want to go fight for their country.
Yeah,
Less and less people want to put boots on the ground or want to go to war. So,
yeah,
war's not going to stop. It never does. It's part of the human condition. So, I'm guessing that these will become increasingly more important
yeah,
because again, war is not going to stop, and your ability to go from defense to offense or to protect yourself is becoming a little bit more important. And then finally, they need to spend more on everything. Those
yeah,
minimums now, like at 5% for NATO, that's a pretty big number.
yeah,
So that tells me that there's that guaranteed buyer. They have to diversify in all the different areas. And
yeah,
every country wants to be stockpiled with these drones, with their tanks, and with everything else in between. So is that kind of what you mean by like that 7 year cycle and that
yeah. Yeah.
people are.
At the very least, it's 7 years, and then this particular industry, it is kind of like the foundation. It's like, hey, before you had to have a big army, now you got to have a big drone fleet. Like that, it's and then secondary to that, you're going to have a big USV, so unmanned surface vehicle fleet, and then third to that, you're going to have a big ground vehicle fleet, unmanned ground fleet, and then they all got to talk together, and then they all got
Mm.
to but in combat, it will still be the same as before when humans were involved, and now it's robots. He who controls the airspace will control the battlefield, right? And so that's why drones are leading that front edge of it, because we've gone from an environment where you need billion-dollar systems and F-35s and integrated AWACS systems and satellite da 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 to down to okay, now if I put up 500 or 5,000, $2,000 drones, which is less than the cost of a wing on an airplane, you control the airspace. And I don't have to have this incredible $1 trillion infrastructure to do it. I mean, that's a big deal. And so yeah, this isn't going to slow down anytime soon.
And sorry, I have to sneak one more in because I just thought of this out loud. So in terms of actual combat, something that I've been seeing in terms of what's happening over in the East, again, we know which country that is. They've been talking about creating these swarms of drones to actually go wipe out the Starlink internet. So they're thinking of ways where they want to tool up. And again, in that arms race, it means that if they're doing it, we have to do it. If we're doing it, they're going to do it more. And then it just the tit for tat and it goes higher and higher. So like there's some of those use cases that I didn't really think of until recently where if they have enough volume, they can actually go and wipe out communication systems, not just power like they're doing today. So like I guess there's a
There,
lot more.
there's yeah, there's no defense systems out there that were designed to defend against. And if you think the number 10,000 is big, it multiply it by 10
Okay.
or more. That's the numbers that are like you send in 1 million drones, right? What's going to stop it?
Hmm.
5%. An EMP blast that also takes out everything else. I don't know. Like, and there's
Hmm.
going to be like 10% of them are going to get through. Okay, well, that's 50,000 drones coming. Like, it's over. Like that's the new thinking that has to, kind of unfold. And
Hmm.
so it's going to be an interesting number of years as it relates to innovation in drone and counter drone.
So let's finish with this if you don't mind. So if you think about like the last 7 years of your roadmap, actually developing these drones and different product lines, like what do you forecast the next 7 years will look like? And like so basically, how can investors kind of get excited about what could come in the future? Because again, these are really big ideas. These are really big themes. They're huge budgets. The market's always forward looking. So like if we think about the future, like what does Cameron think the future could look like in drones?
Yeah, I think well, it's going to be integrated in integrated systems. So drones working with surface vehicles, working with ground vehicles, working with all these different integrated systems. It's going to be a lot of AI integration in terms of integrated intelligence,
Mm,
right? Real-time analysis. And protecting communication assets is going to be absolutely paramount. So defense as it relates to this is going to be a big deal. And this all sounds like terrible and horrible and all the rest of it, but like when we start thinking and talking about what's going to happen in the commercial or the civilian world with drones and how it's going to drive costs down around everything around inspection and construction and the additional data that it's going to provide to us. Nothing collects data better than a drone. It's a flying sensor. And so the unique new sets of data that will be able to be fed into AI to help us teach and learn new things. Like it is truly going to be revolutionary in that regard. I mean, I kind of think about my kids. Dad, you were alive before there were cell phones. Like at that. It's like very quickly it'll be like people will never be able to imagine a world without drones because they'll be worn into woven, excuse me, into the fabric of how we actually operate as a society. Whether
mm.
they're some sort of assistant or whether they're just performing daily tasks for us. So it will be unrecognizable in less than 15 years.
Or maybe a little bit more like the Jetsons, where we
Yeah,
can't exactly know what the future looks like, but it sounds like this is moving fairly fast. So,
yeah, it is.
um, thank you for your time today, Cam. It was enlightening to hear about your news release and the progress you've been making. And I'm
Likewise.
wishing you all the best of luck.
Yeah, thank you for everything.
Thank you.